City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded November 5, 2019.
All right, I will call to order the November 5th meeting of the Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission, and appreciate you all being here today for what appears to be a very interesting, as they all are, meeting coming up. Leanne, would you be kind enough to call the roll, please?
Carlson?
Here.
Kirschling?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Westcott?
Here. Commissioner Srusky is excused from the meeting. I have just a few things I wish to remark upon in the part of the agenda that belongs to me. First of all, Commissioners, you realize today when you got here that you received the bills for the first time. Bob is with his wife in Milwaukee, and my first opportunity to come in and review and approve the bills in his absence was today. So if you want to spend a few minutes between now and the time we get to the formal approval or adoption of the bills, that would be appreciated. I don't think you're going to find any surprises in there, but I wanted you to be aware of that. I also want you to know, Commissioners, an idea that we have been discussing in the background, and I've asked Chief Skiba, I will now publicly ask Chief Finn, and all of the assistant chiefs and other members of the management team, as goals are being set for our police, our fire, and our EMS for 2020, one of the things that I'm asking the leadership team to look at is there a way to move the commission to more of a completely electronic commission? And at some point, perhaps, we don't know yet. We're still doing our due diligence. So the answer to this may very well be no. But at some point, could the commission purchase a few electronic readers, and then the packets are electronically posted to basically get us away from the paper generation? More and more of the work that I do is strictly electronic with organizations, groups. I want to at least take a look at that, and I want the commissioners to be thinking about it. Now, right now, we don't really have the tool to move us electronically other than you receive emails at home, you read them on your home computers. But we're looking at ideas to perhaps move us to a paperless commission at some point in 2020. But we're just basically beginning our due diligence on that, and we'll appreciate your feedback. And perhaps that can be one of the goals that we set for ourselves as a commission moving into 2020. Now, we realize that may require the city to purchase a few pieces of equipment for commissioners that will move forward in time with commissioners, but it should basically move us away from the paper generation.
Are you thinking like an iPad?
Something like that, some type
of some sort.
Chief Skiba had an interesting idea, just some type of a reading device, electronic reading device. Because all we really do when we have these paper packets in front of us at these meetings is we read them. But I want you all thinking about it. I mean, we're just starting that process, and that's why I'm briefing you on it here today. The other thing I want you to be aware of that you may have seen in I think it was the Metro Wire, at least I give Metro Wire credit for it, is the city is moving away or making changes to how it keeps minutes or request minutes are kept by those who record minutes for its committees, boards, and commissions. And at some point, either this month or next month, the change, as I understand it, will fundamentally be meeting called to order, the agenda item, and then a motion to approve or a motion to deny, and then the vote. Is that fundamentally how you understand it? So I want you to be aware of that and that change coming, especially since we're here and it's all captured on video these days. The other thing I will report to the community, it is with some sadness that I report if members of the police department, fire service, veteran officers may remember Commissioner Pat Woodka. Pat was a longtime member of this Police and Fire Commission. She served as the president of the Police and Fire Commission. I have learned today that Pat has died at the age of, I understand, 89 years old. So we certainly want to send our prayers to her family. And at least one more time, publicly thank Pat for her over a decade's worth of service to the city on the Police and Fire Commission, many years also as the president of this commission. So with that said, I would like to move to item 3, which is an important presentation, as they all are monthly. Our monthly presentation in November is agendaed here, the homelessness within our community. And I'm going to recognize Chief Marty Skiba. Chief, if you take it from there, sir.
So thank you. First and foremost, this is a ongoing issue that we know needs to be addressed, as law enforcement is the community's first responder many a times to these individuals that are most vulnerable within our community and are in most need of assistance at times and are in crisis. We feel it important to bring the commission aware and make the community more aware of what's going on, and not a call to action so much as a recognition of all the work that many entities are doing and coming together to be more effective and more collaborative, so we're able to address this issue as best we can with the resources our community has. And with that said, I would ask Assistant Chief Tom Zenner to come up front. He has done a lot of work with this, and the reason Assistant Chief Zenner is involved in this is from an operational perspective. They're the first ones on patrol who come in contact many a times and have to come up with that solution, so to speak. So with that said, Assistant Chief Zenner.
Tom.
Hello. We have a little technology glitch going on. My clicker no longer works. So Chief Skiba is going to step in, and he's going to be my clicker during this presentation. Today we want to touch on a subject affecting our community, that being homeless and individuals at risk. Although this is not a new concern that we have experienced, we are witnessing an increase statistically, locally, and with that a growing impact upon our community. We have put together a PowerPoint concerning the homeless within Stevens Point, covering a spectrum of the more overt issues involving our at-risk population to the less evident, more root cause. Ultimately, to identify homeless as a problem with our community would be a bit inaccurate. It is best described as a symptom of a much larger issue, and we'll go over that within our presentation. So, you want to hit that first one? I'm going to cover 3 different, normally everyday citizens are going to see within our community, what some of us will see, and then again, what is really the root cause of this issue. But next slide. What we're getting called to, and where the complaints that we receive ultimately that involve some of our homeless, would be the library and areas in the main 3rd Street area. There's others, area parks, but this is some of the pictures. Intentionally took pictures. We're not looking to create an exposure of anyone, so to speak, or identify individuals. So in pictures where we could at best not have individuals within the photos, there will be some. We do not have them included, obviously, in these first few. Next photo. This is within the library. Ultimately, this area is a congregation, as you see the chairs sitting by the windows. Also the one pillar, there's a sign there that says keep your feet off. The only reason I took that photo, it just kind of stuck out to me. Obviously, you see the boot marks that are on the wall. These, as small as it is, it's still an issue that addresses down in the library and complaints that we do receive at the PD. Some statistics that we gathered as of 2018, we had 142 entries within the CAD system. That's computer-aided dispatch. 142 entries of law enforcement responding to the library.
This is just 142 to the library?
To the library, or I should clarify that library. It was as a landmark.
All right, thank you.
So it's not just within the library, it's where that was identified as a landmark where officers are responding. It could be in the parking lot or in the street in front of the library.
Proximity.
Right.
Okay.
As of September 23 of this year, and this is when this presentation was put together, We have 116, and we're on pace for 158. So that's a growing call for service at the library, or where that is identified as a landmark. Some of the calls I identified underneath: 13 calls disturbance, some suspicious activity, welfare checks, extra patrol requests. Welfare checks can, in many cases, involve mental health calls. It could be somebody sleeping or concerned about somebody's welfare. It's just spell it out, welfare check. Extra patrols would be, we've had complaints there in the past, and they're requesting officers do a walkthrough or put it on their agenda to keep an eye on the place. Broke this down. I pulled 2015 out as a comparison, and the reason why I used 2015, again, homeless is not, or at risk, these type of calls are not new to the police department, but was significantly less than what we're seeing today. If you can look at the rank, the library ranked 12th this year, fairly consistent with 2018. 2015, that was 27th. Mead Park, Piffner Park, those are two parks that we do see an increase in activity or complaints that are related to the homeless issue. Again, that is significantly uptick from where we were at in 2015. 649 Washington. This is a residence subsidized housing. The reason why that was included on this presentation, we have had contact involving homeless at that residence, either coming and going, either the individuals living at that house or temporarily have shelter but have come from the homeless issues that we've seen, or it's homeless crashing at the place. That one residence itself is ranked 23rd this year. Last year it was 18th, so we've actually succeeded in improving. 2015, obviously, that wasn't even on the grid. Salvation Army, by far increasing. We're 7th rated call for service. Now, many of the homeless obviously are not staying at the Salvation Army, but the Salvation Army provides a service to our community. Even though you are not staying at the Salvation Army, they do offer food. So many of our homeless individuals within our community go there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we do see an increase in calls. Given a comparison, or I've thrown in Bucol Park, ranked 28th. Graffiti's Bar and Grill, I'm not trying to identify that as a problem area. That is located dead center of the square, and that is used as a landmark many times for calls outside that location. So even though it's identified as the bar, that's anything that happened in or around that location. That ranked 34th. That was, and if you think of that being located on the square, you would think that'd be a high call for service area. And then the YMCA at 45.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know that you track this in any way, but a lot of the calls that you're dealing with at the library or with other homeless, were they once residents of the Salvation Army, and then because of rule violations or whatever, they're kicked out of there?
Some of them, we haven't tracked them, but obviously, and we'll cover that a little bit later
Okay.
on, but you're talking sex offenders where obviously they're not allowed into the warming shelter or the Salvation Army, or for one reason or another, they were kicked out. But also, we will touch on later in the presentation a bit too. This is majority of the people that we have had contact with are from Stevens Point. They're not from outside the community. Oh, okay, next slide, we're up to. Again, just kind of going through that rank comparison. 2015, the Salvation Army was 7th, or 2019, Salvation Army was ranked 7th. Comparison, 2015 River Cove Apartment Complex. That's a 5-building complex on the south side of town. The library ranks 12th today. 2015, that was entire junior high. And as we can go down the ranking, Mead Park ranked 14th for calls for service. And really, Mead Park, it's on the west side of town. Not a big call for service in the past. For that to even hop up on the statistically the way it is, certainly identify an issue. Edgewater Manor was where that was previously. You see Quick Trip North and Cops Food Market, those gas drive-offs and retail thefts. That's the reason why it's not that they are crime-ridden locations. It's just those types of calls we obviously go to within the year. So, what some of us see, these locations and what we are identifying here, some people may come across it out in our community, but it's not as overt, obviously, as what we have seen down on Main Street. This is a temporary shelter. I actually know the individual that's living in this location. I've dealt with them on calls back when I was on the road 10 years ago. This is located, I believe that's behind Franciscans. You see the Tupperware down on the bottom of the stairs. There's blankets located in that. Those white specks, that's not paint. As I walked up to it, about 10 pigeons took off and scared the crap out of me, so I can't fault them for what they did there. But actually, living in this immediate area was some college students, a couple ladies that came down from the apartments above this location, and they actually knew this individual, not by name, but they talked. He sits down there and feeds the pigeons, and just kind of an interesting conversation I had with the two ladies. So, temporary shelters, vehicles parked in parking lots downtown. You see the officer that's located in that one photo to the right. That's our crisis intervention officer, Officer Mike Radzik. Absolutely phenomenal job he does with mental health issues within our community. And honestly, he's become more of our homeless officer most recently. And with his assistance, we have been tracking individuals that we've had contact with, and we'll go through the numbers shortly. But the blue vehicle, actually married couple within Stevens Point are homeless, living out of that vehicle. And I was following Officer Radzik around taking photos. And the white car that you see him talking to, we had no idea, never had prior contact with it. We found out that was another homeless person that just came to our community the day that we took those photos. So, safe sleeping areas. This is down by the library, and we get several complaints on individuals sleeping in this area. And the reason why I call it safe sleeping areas, all communities have a culture. And sometimes within that culture, obviously, we have subcultures. And we have a homeless culture where sometimes safety becomes an issue. And even though you're homeless doesn't mean you're immune to crime. And sleeping where it's lit and in a public area is safer sometimes than sleeping out in the darkness and putting yourself at risk. That was from conversations I had with officers that have contact on night shifts with some of the individuals that you're seeing in these photos. Transients, this photo, well, as you can see, that's the Fox Theater. The individuals that showed up there actually came in on the train, and it was just a one-night stop. They ended up in Stevens Point. These photos that were taken on nights was from our night patrol. I asked them that when they have contact, take some photos for us to put this slide presentation together. Abandoned camps, this area, and when you see Mead Park raising on our ranking system, this is not too far away from Mead Park. Commonly referred to as Tent City. I don't know if that's something that's been coined in the law enforcement area or if that's something that's known outside. This actual location, I believe this was the site just north of Mead Park. Took quite a few pictures in this area. As you see, clothing strewn about. This was actually abandoned when we went out there. This was actually left at the scene. Quite a bit of clothing. There was actually a very nice pair of Nike shoes, black in color. Looked like they were just bought and they were left at the scene amongst all the clothing. A couple more photos. That's an abandoned tent. We do have a organization within the community that has, and I believe still continues to give tents to some of the homeless, so they do have shelter. and we have found them out at this location. And then we do have our hazards. Almost every site we come across has a campfire abandoned, left at the scene. Many of these locations, one was located in a pine, I don't know what you call it, a pine plantation, but it was pretty much dead pines, very flammable area. And then within those fire pits, we normally find a combustible, actually that one on the bottom was a fire extinguisher. I guess that didn't burn too well, but that was found in a fire pit too. Now this is what we don't see. National Law Center of Homeless and Poverty estimates 2.5 to 3.5 million Americans sleep either in a shelter, transitional housing, public places not meant for human habitation. That's what we're seeing in Stevens Point. We haven't talked about the shelters. This is just people living on the streets and vehicles or temporary housing. This was a survey I came across on the internet. And this is kind of telling. The first one, homeless among families. We don't really witness, or we're not dealing with a homeless issue. We have one married couple that's homeless in Stevens Point. I'm not talking about that could be, say, at the Salvation Army. This is at risk that are out on our streets. And we have one family that we're dealing with, married couple, I should say. Most what we are dealing with are just individuals that are homeless. They don't have family members. They're not married. They're by themselves. And what sticks out the most that we're seeing for the unaccompanied individuals, number 4 and 5, mental illness and lack of needed services, substance abuse. We have a fair share of resources within Stevens Point to address this issue. We have shelters. We have CAP services. We have, actually, as we talked about with Officer Radsick, has linked some of our homeless aging disability resource center where they have received temporary housing, be it at the castle, turn of the century, for one way or the other, or one reason or the other, they end up back out on the street. But resources, we have plenty in Stevens Point. We're not seeing that as the big overriding issue. The big overriding issue we see is what we have identified, mental illness and substance abuse. We have been tracking, and this has increased. This was, again, back in September. I'm working with Officer Radsick. We identified as at risk, identified as individuals currently homeless or currently living in an arrangement that's best defined as temporary. 16 individuals currently being tracked. Again, that is right. That has gone up. But at this time, it was 16 individuals, 13 males, 3 females. One was a married couple.
Do they all stay here through the winter?
Well, we do have a large amount. I don't know if these 16, they're here still.
Okay.
What we have been tracking, names are if they're currently working with Health and Human Services or other support agencies, if they're on probation and parole, sex offenders, alcohol, drug use, how many contacts we have had, documented mental health, local family connections, and what's their current status. The reason why we have the sex offender probation and parole, those are obvious issues of where they are not a candidate for Salvation Army, so we're obviously looking at that.
How about
too.
veterans, Tom?
Veterans, we have not tracked if it's a veteran. I do know we have had a few not currently homeless, but certainly at risk, that we do have our veteran liaison officer working with.
Okay.
Current living status, 9 of these individuals out of those 16 are currently living on the street. 4 of those are living in vehicles. 1 intermittently living with a family member. 1 identified, she said she was couch surfing, pretty much living at a friend's house, wherever she can find a bed. 1 in subsidized housing until a recent arrest, and we have been advised now that obviously individual has been evicted, and he'll be homeless upon release from jail. 9 of the individuals have a direct connection to Portage County, either family or they are by marriage. One individual's from Manitowoc, 2 from Wood County, so obviously fairly close to our community too. We have 1 individual that came from state of Texas. 1 moved out of the area but was originally from Stevens Point, so it obviously still has connections here. 2 individuals, we were not able to determine what connections they had to Stevens Point. Also, to go back on it, what we're saying as a connection to Stevens Point is they have lived here for an extended period of time, 5 years minimum. 6 of the individuals we know are working with Health and Human Services are in CLUSA. 2 individuals, those 2 that are married, are actually working with Health and Human Services over a child custody issue. They had their children taken away. 5 individuals are on probation, 1 on parole, 2 are registered sex offenders. 1 individual has multiple restraining orders. Police contact, this is just 2019, 16 individuals combined for 317 police contacts the current year. Those range from disturbance, trespassing, disorderly conducts, welfare checks, thefts, public intoxication. We'll say this, actually 2 individuals combined for, I believe it was 87. Documented mental health. What we used on this is on our records that we had contact with this individual and we did an assessment for potential emergency commitments. 9 of the individuals we have had have entries within our records management system for assessments on mental health. 2 individuals have documented entries for detox commitments. 6 individuals have alcohol and drug-related calls for service. This is calls where I'm saying actually we dealt with them, law enforcement, based on a call related to alcohol or drug use. 7 individuals, only alcohol use. 1 individual only had drug use. 2 individuals have no documented contact for drug or alcohol use at the police department. However, both are suspected of drug use. That, and we'll wait on this one for a second, that's kind of a snapshot of what we're dealing with in the community. Obviously, mental health calls, drug and alcohol use, prevalent in the individuals that we have had contact with. This wasn't a presentation to identify, it's a problem and how we're going to address it. It's simply stating this is the issue that we have within our community. And as a police department, we're going to need help from the community and how to address it. The answer is not within the police department. Myself and the chief have had conversations on this in the past. I don't want to say this is not a police issue. It's certainly a police issue. We're members of the community too. But to deal with this, we're not going to solve it by throwing money at it or resources. We have that within the community. Certainly, money does help when you're dealing with the food and through Salvation Army, but this problem, it's bigger than a roof over somebody's head. And that's something that we will have to work with team members within the community to try to find a solution. This is this was actually sent to us. It's at a location within our community, and you see the time, 6:22. This is an individual looking for a place to crash, and this is a person that we know him.
Is that a home?
I guess it should be a film.
Is that a house?
I'm not going to go in the location where it is.
Does the commission have questions for
Nobody's home though at this
Tom?
location. So
Wait,
Tom.
we're watching the video.
Okay. Tom, and you, on a couple of occasions throughout your presentation, referenced that the community of Stevens Point, awareness is so important. So congratulations to you and the team on preparing this, because it does take a positive step in that awareness area. But you referenced a couple of times in your presentation the resources that are available in Stevens Point, And I know that you and the management team are working with a number of resources through the community. Chief Skiba, you and I have discussed this. Would you just spend a moment and maybe share too some of the ongoing resource contacts that you, your assistant chiefs, and your management and officers have to basically, work through the resources that are available? Chief?
So with the understanding that we're only going to get better if we bring more people into this discussion, we have reached out to Health and Human Services. We've reached out to United Way. We are going to be working with Salvation Army, with our local medical facilities, along with our faith-based. We understand that every part of our community needs to engage and needs to be involved. And I must confess, as I speak with all of them, they are involved. But it is fragmented, and it's very important that as we are as I've said earlier, the first responder, that individual who is going out there, for that officer to be as good as he can be, as she can be, they need to be able to communicate the resources to the individual in need. And this goes for whatever type of call it is, whether it's a domestic at a home or a bar fight or what have you, but these individuals, we at the police department recognize, are the most vulnerable, are the most in need, and we believe that the community has the resources to avail to better provide and help them. So this is the first step. This didn't happen just overnight. Clearly, we have to look at the ramifications of our choices. It's very easy to donate money to a food pantry. It does help. It's very easy to volunteer some time here and there, but we also have to look at the ramifications. When I first started here, we had no warming shelter. It was difficult for us to deal with that problem, though the problem then was smaller, understandably. As we have a warming shelter, what are those ramifications? We have individuals now who are effectively living homelessly in Stevens Point year after year after year, and they still are in the throes of their addiction. They're still wrestling with their mental health issues, and we can do better to address those, I believe.
Are there questions for either Tom or Marty from the commission?
No, I thought it was a very good presentation, and as I said before, the first step in solving a problem
Right.
is to get people talking about it, so hats off for this. I see it as an excellent problem-solving initiative for Officer Radzik. If two people are responsible for 80 some calls, did you say, Tom?
2 individuals.
I would say those two would be my goal, to reduce those calls for service in whatever way possible. But I got to tell you, looking at other cities I've been in the last few years, I don't think it's going to get better for a while until you pull all the players involved and have a concerted effort to make a difference, because it's an epidemic in other cities. Right now you have an opportunity to make a difference and to thwart it before it grows, because it will grow if you let it go.
Other questions, comments? If not, I will thank you, Tom, and the live stream on this, and Chief. And certainly, it's an incredibly important topic for the community. And Tom, if you and your team would continue to track this information, and I think we'll look for an update sometime in the next 6 to 7 months, or when you feel it's appropriate to get back here, and basically do a checkup on how's the community doing. Okay, thank you. With that said, I will move forward to item 4 on the agenda. That is the approval of the minutes, members of the commission. You have the minutes from our October 1st meeting in front of you. What are your wishes?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Carlson, second by Commissioner Moore to approve. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 5, the confirmation of the bills. If you want a minute or two, in addition to any time given at the beginning of the meeting, but I am comfortable with what was presented from police, fire, and EMS, And before I move on them, are there any questions?
I just quickly looked at them. What I'm blown away by is the software licensing fees. Are those an annual thing, or?
So, yes, they are, and unfortunately, in today's day and age, which I would say most homeowners,
Right.
families are realizing within our community, the cost is shifting from the purchase of just an item to actually, they'll give you the phone for free,
Right.
and then you're paying, they got you hooked, and they're paying the maintenance. But as you're aware, Commissioner, working in law enforcement, the tools that you need, if they design them in a way that, you have no control over. So yes, we have to keep in mind, this affects operationally the dollars that we're spending. So when we are asking council for approval for things, we have to be very cognizant of this.
Chief Finn, you look like you wanted to add something.
On the fire side, we were kind of far behind with IT support, and the budget's been going all over the place. Now, these software licensing has become part of the operating budget where they weren't before.
Yeah.
Like Chief Skipper just said. So that's taking dollars away from us running an department. But we're also getting away from the fire department, different color construction paper for payroll. We are going to stuff that I can actually understand, so it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing the licensing fees.
Okay.
If there are no questions on the bills, I will move approval as they've been submitted to the Police and Fire Commission.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Kirschling. All in favor of confirming the bills as presented and approving them, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Our next item is the Fire Chief's report, including the report from Emergency Medical Services. Chief, you have the floor. I suppose you want to talk first about the live training exercise you had yesterday on Washington Avenue.
Or maybe you don't, I don't know.
No, we did, the city owned a house that Lieutenant Briggs and Chief Moody worked on for months, getting it in compliance. We did notify all the neighbors in the area. We walked door to door, so there was notice given that we were burning down a house yesterday. The DNR was out there, everything was in compliant. It went well, very well. It's a very unique training opportunity to get live fire burns. With new regulations, it's much harder to accomplish. So all in all, it was a very successful day.
I heard it was a hot time.
Oh, God.
How do you start something like that?
Wood hay on the torch. We can no longer burn furniture anymore like we used to. It's got to be pallets and hay, and
Well, that's realistic.
it gets fire and it gets heat. Actually, Sarah videotaped. She was in the burning building yesterday, making some
Oh, wow.
videotapes for us. We are gonna make a recruiting video.
Oh, good, okay.
So, and Sarah's the integral part of making that video.
Well, you frequently talk, and maybe it's important just for the benefit of the community since we're on video here. I think the commission completely understands, but you frequently talk quite eloquently about why it's so important when the fire service has these live burn opportunities. Because first of all, as you pointed out, they don't happen as much as perhaps they did in the past. But why is it important for firefighters to experience that firsthand, Chief?
Because you can get into a burn simulator, and everyone, once you get in there once, everyone kind of knows it's like going through a tack house. You can put up props and stuff. But once you get in a house, making a stairwell on the second floor, getting that heat to hit you in the face, it's a little different than going into a prop. Doing a primary search above a fire, you got the heat and the smoke. It's, even though it's just hay, and it's not heat where it's going to flash over, but at least you get some fire experience to know what it's like. So when you're in the real situation, your training instincts kick in, and it's not the first time you're encountering this environment.
What else would you like to report to the commission for the month, sir?
You have both the fire and EMS report. Just noticed the number of attendees for fire safety presentations. It was over 1,200. It was Fire Prevention Month for October. So we were busy with fire prevention. We were busy with budgets, operating, and capital. We also conducted interviews on 2 days for new candidates. By Canley input on the December agenda, approval of a list for new candidates. It'll come before you in December. Also, if you know, and training, it says ropes and confined space training has been completed. Each discipline is 40 hours. Each member went through and completed all 40 hours over the last 6 months. And it says total hours of training, it's like 700, or for the month, 171. But you take 80 hours times the 39 guys, it comes up to over 3,200 hours of training that was given throughout this 6-month period of time. But that's training for the department. And the fire marshal position is integral in that because with the fire marshal out doing the inspections he's doing, it allows our guys to do training. It goes hand in hand.
Are there questions for Chief Finn on his monthly report?
Busy month?
If there are no questions for Bob, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the fire chief report.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7, we have approval of 2 officers to regular police office status. Commissioners, in your packet, you have correspondence from the shift commanders for both officers. Chief Skibble, what would you add to this, sir?
Other than, again, as we continually seem to be hiring personnel here from turnover or from retirement, we've been very fortunate to have a very diverse life experience group coming to us, and again, with Officer Lipinski and Officer Clark, great additions. Officer Lipinski being involved in the military clearly gives him some perspective of things, which demonstrates sometimes a level of maturity that you would otherwise not see at his age. So
I have to commend Lieutenant Moss. That was one of the best letters I thought I've read in a long time on
Thank
his
you.
recommendation.
And with that said, I will move that Officer Joseph Clark and Officer Tanner Lipinski be appointed to the regular police officer status for the city of Stevens Point.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Congratulations to both. Item number 8 is the Chief of Police report. Chief Skibba?
So, a couple of things wanted to discuss. Obviously, as we understand the facilities that city employees, you know, we were talking about community safety earlier, and part of our community are the employees and staff of the city of Stevens Point. And part of Lieutenant Williams' work and listed under the projects, working with the city departments, recognizing that there are many things that we are teaching our community, whether it's the business community, the school environment, that turning the focus to taking care of our own a little bit, if you will, looking and evaluating the structures themselves and some of the practices that our current employees within the city are involved in, and again, making them feel a bit safer, as well as providing us a better way to respond in case there is a need in today's environment. From a staffing perspective, we would like to make the commission aware that we are currently in the process of reviewing the applications that we have received for creating the next or new eligibility list of the last hirings that you saw that effectively emptied the list that we had, recognizing that we are anticipating a hire or 2 in 2020. We are starting to work on that, and so we are prepared for January to present individuals to this commission, anticipating the funding from council. Other than that, obviously this time of the year is our fall drug collection. Between what we have at our drop-off, which still gets used quite a bit here at the department, and the Lincoln Center took in over 450 pounds of prescription medications over this past 6 months, part here at the PD and in the Lincoln Center. that would be it.
Chief, you want to update the community on the canine?
Yes, thank you very much. So, I forget sometimes social media puts it, we get it out there and then we lose track of it. So, our most recent canine has come on board and actually had started its 6-week training in Indiana starting this Monday. We are hopeful to see Officer Ballou and Alana back at the PD and in the city the second half of December. So we will see how interesting of a Christmas it is for them once they hit patrol.
You want to update us on where we are with hiring a drug officer promotion and what you anticipate will occur in 2020, please?
So with that, we have gone through our selection process seeking a veteran officer to fill that second role. And because, again, we feel the need to hit the ground running, you'll most likely recall that Detective Officer LaRank had been one of our drug officers previously. He currently is assigned to our investigation bureau, and has assisted as a secondary drug officer in the past. We feel it's going to be a good fit, and again, we can hit the ground running immediately. And that way, that position is fulfilled. He already has the training, so that will, from a fiscal perspective, be much better for the community and our training budget. And again, instead of sending him off to school, he's going to be able to get right into the investigations, as well as it was pointed out at council, one of the benefits of having a second drug officer is that we are going to have more contacts, sooner contacts with our community. And in those unfortunate situations, which we are seeing, where we have very young individuals who are being exposed to needles and illegal drugs, we're able to get those individuals help get the family members into the system, into Health and Human Services, into the medical field sooner, and thereby preventing more tragic outcomes.
Are there questions for the chief from the commission? Yes.
I was curious, I saw the neighborhood watch at the Rock and Roll Cafe. Are there more neighborhood watches, or was that just a special thing where people were concerned about something, or are you starting a neighborhood watch program again?
So we do have the Neighborhood Watch program or program within the city of Stevens Point. That part of the community reached out again, said that they would like to kind of rejuvenate, and again, from your past experience, it seems to ebb and flow. If the the community in that small neighborhood is feeling safe, we don't hear anything about it. As soon as there's either some thefts from a vehicle or what have you, that raises a concern, which it's unfortunate that an event needs to take place, but we always welcome the opportunity to reach out and work with the community collaboratively to again remind them of some of the simplest things of locking your door and locking your vehicle and those type of things, but sometimes that friendly reminder goes a long way.
Yeah, nice to see that.
Other questions for Marty? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Seconded by
I will second it.
Commissioner Carlson. All in favor of approving the police chief's report as submitted to the Police and Fire Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item number 9 is we're going
I
to,
was reading.
and number 9, we're going to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute, considering the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This will be for the initial annual performance evaluations of our police chief and fire chief. I will so make that motion.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kirschling, excuse me. Please call the roll.
Carlson?
Yes.
Kirschling?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Westcott?
Yes. Okay, we are going to convene into executive session.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.